Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jess Sonal. Yes, we are back, and we are back together this time. My guest, I'm so privileged to have Dr. Vimal Kumar with me, and this time I made sure that we come together so that there is no anticipation of what's going to happen in Sonal's show today. So here we are. Um, Thank you for being so patient with me, and welcome to my very first episode of the Blue Mug chat, and my Blue Mug is right here. I'm going to wait for a little bit so that some of the viewers can join in. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce Dr. Vimal, and then we will get on to the show because I know a lot of you have been waiting to hear from her. Um, Thanks to the technical glitches that we went through, that we couldn't actually get on with the show, but here we are. So Dr. Vimal Kumar has been in the field of mental health for about 18 years in both clinical and non-clinical setup. She has worked with Dr. Care's Hospital and the founder of Dr. Care's Hospital, Dr. Vijay Kumar, who's a very well-known neurosurgeon in the capacity of a pain psychologist. Her expertise lie in domestic abuse, acceptance of losing a loved one, adapting to change, dealing with fear, anxiety, depression, workspace related issues, you know, and very privileged to have her here. Uh, One of the reasons we are also doing this conversation. Hi, Shalini. Hi. Good to see you here. One of the reasons we want to do this show and this conversation is also to bring about awareness about our own self and for people around us, so that we can recognize if there is a need for us to seek counseling, if there is a need for us to see a psychologist. Also, this time of pandemic is not helping. My mom's here. Hi, mommy. Today we are back, and my dad is also here. Uh, so so one of the reasons, the whole endeavor to have this conversation is to bring about awareness about the self and for people around us, so that we can know the signs and the symptoms if we feel the need that somebody needs to reach out to a psychologist. Because in India, it's still a big stigma. Mental illness is, to a certain extent, is not considered a thing for various reasons. Societal. Uh, Sometimes also I feel denial. Dr. Vimal, what do you think? I think there's still a lot of you will know, have things actually changed in the past years about people reaching out to you in terms of mental health?
Thank you, Sonal, for having me on the show. It's a privilege. I feel privileged to be here talking to you and everybody else who's watching. Um, Depression is one of the largest experiences of human suffering, and it's likely to occur in about 60% of the people. So it's prevalent and it's omnipresent. Um, Human distress indicates the need to look into unmet or undealt human needs rather than it be categorized as a mental disorder, because I think that is so. There are three stages to depression, which is mild, moderate, and intense. And while we talk on, I'll also tell you the different types. Very often, one of the taboos
Can you,
around depression is that uh,
sorry, Dr. Vimal, could you raise your volume? Is there a way to increase your volume a little bit?
um, I hope
Or
it's
just
better
come
now.
closer, or maybe just come a little closer.
Yeah, all right. So, very often, sadness and or a low feeling is misunderstood to be depression, and it is not. So we all have low moods and low phases. Like every single day, we don't get up feeling the same or absolutely charged and motivated to go ahead and face everything that's coming our way throughout the day. Um, if that becomes a chronic state, the unenthusiasm, the demotivation, or the lack of interest and the sense of worthlessness, then uh, it is a depressive mood, and the chronicness of a depressive mood leads to it becoming a depression. So, and human beings are whole only if emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually they are well. So if supposing someone's doing running a marathon and not really feeling good about it, being a celebrity, being famous, but they're not feeling good about it, they have achievements and they don't feel good about it, there is, at the emotional or the mental dimension of their existence, there needs to be some work done, which will then align them into the physical achievement. So,
Okay.
and this is one of the things that goes around, because when we hear of somebody's suicide, we say, oh, but uske liye to zindagi was doing so well. He was doing so
Right.
well. She was doing
Right.
so well. And,
Okay.
she had all the money and she had all the fame. But that's the way we are looking at it. It's not necessarily the way they feel about it.
Correct. Right. Right.
Right? So that's one of the taboos why people don't reach out. You asked me whether people have reached out. There is more reaching out now than there was earlier, for sure. But I feel that also the reasons to be depressed have also gone up. So
Yes. Absolutely.
if we take that into cognizance, then the two are not. I mean, there's still a lot of people who need help and who don't reach out.
Right. So I think I'm going to start with the basics here, and we will get on to the show. To the viewers, this is an interactive session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them. I will be asking those questions as we go along the show. So, Dr. Kumar, with the basic, what is depression, and are there different kinds of depression?
Yes, there are different kinds of depressions, but see, doctors diagnose depression as a subjective analogy of a cluster of presenting symptoms, right? Um, Symptoms of depression are also based upon a concept of depression, because the human mind issues are the only ones in the body which are treated without really looking at the organ itself. Everything else, we undergo a scan or a X-ray or a test, but
Right.
there's no test for this,
Correct.
right? So it's based on a cluster of symptoms, and it's also it's a um, what should I say? It's a construct of a lot of beliefs around it. And one of the primary things is that how do we detect depression is the change. It's the change in mood. It's the change in eating and sleeping patterns. There is decreased interest. Those of you who are watching out there, I think this is something that you might want to really take note of, because these are the symptoms of depression to watch out for. Decreased interest, loss of interest, um, tearful. Very often, people who are setting into the depressive phase are tearful, and there may not really be a reason to break out into tears. Feelings of helplessness, decrease in physical energy. There is this constant feeling of fatigue, forgetfulness, and decreased concentration. There's changes in weight and appetite. One can lose or gain. Sleep disturbances. You may sleep too much or too little. This feeling of doom, having done something terribly wrong. So there's this overwhelming feeling of guilt, but it's not explainable because there's no issue which one is consciously regretting, but there's this just sense of doom. Decreased work performance, काम में मन नहीं लगता है, loss of interest to interact with people, don't want to talk to anybody, are happy being in their room. Irritability and anger outbursts is one of the key symptoms of depression. So, we very often, and this is also a taboo and a myth around it, that depressed people are always low energy and they keep silent and keep quiet. Angry people are also depressed.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, this is one of the people who remain irritable all the time, but they were not like that. Again, it's a change in the personality or the person. that is also an onset of depression. Physical symptoms like backache, headache, even otherwise body ache, either dard ho raha hai, udhar. It could be all over the body, changing places. Um, Death wish, like there is often a thought that the world is better off without me, the family will be better off without me. Um, there is also the low and the sad mood, which is consistent. Again, it's the consistency and the chronicness. There is a certain feeling of stuckness. uh, there is a sense of victimization, like poor me, and there is a low sense of achievement. That there's no purpose. I don't know what to live for. I don't have anybody to look up to. So these are about 13 symptoms to look out for, but not each symptom in itself is an issue. A cluster of symptoms is an issue. So maybe if somebody has about 50% of them or more, then one does need to reach out and take help.
So in terms of percentage, so you listed these 15 symptoms, right? So
Yeah.
just from a layman's perspective, out of these 15 symptoms, what are we looking for? Maybe if a person has seven, like, or like in terms of numbers, if we have to like 7, 8 symptoms out of these 15, then there is a need for action,
Yes.
right?
Seven,
Okay,
eight
okay.
symptoms. Yes. That's a good time to reach out.
That's a good time to read. And the other thing that you mentioned is consistency in the system. It's not like one day you get up, you're not feeling good, and you feel you're depressed. No. If that symptom persists for a longer period of time, that
Yes.
means there is a need to reach out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Dr. Vimal, what happens is, so even if we establish that yes, a person or you yourself are suffering from depression, sometimes there is a sense of denial. There is not an openness to seek help. Even if the family members are supportive and they want to help, there is a lot of resistance within a person. And I've heard actually a lot of people talk about that aspect that, okay, even if you know, how do you make a person open to counseling or open to reaching a psychologist?
Yes, it's quite a challenge. And one of the things that I would like to highlight here is whether it's anger or depression, it's a family issue. So if you if it's a so if there's one person in the family or in your friend group who you think needs help, it's that person's entire family which is affected. It is not that just it's not just about that one person, because depression has an onset. It comes on slowly. It's a collection of emotions over different periods of time. So the way to help them is to encourage them. You keep a watch on them. They can't be left alone, because we don't know what stage of depression they're in. You remove all things that can be a source of self harm for them. That
Okay.
means all extra medication, anything sharp, ropes, extra long clothes, all of that needs to go out. They You can also ask somebody else who they have a good rapport with to kind of encourage them. Now, the what you don't do with them is dismiss or minimize what they are feeling. So if they say कि मेरा मन नहीं कर रहा कहीं पे जाने के लिए, I don't want to meet, I don't want to go for this shadi or this gathering, do not say that, oh, it's okay, तुम्हारा तो कभी भी मन नहीं करता है, चल लो, change हो जाएगा. These things
Okay.
aggravate the problem, because the person is not feeling understood,
Right. Feeling of
right?
not being understood is a very, very relevant thing here, right? Right.
Not feeling understood actually aggravates the problem. And in that state, when the person is already feeling so vulnerable,
Right.
and then not being understood heightens the issue. So the sense of worthlessness goes up, and then followed by the symptoms going up. What So you could encourage in ways like you could even negotiate. Okay, I will take the appointment. मैं तुम्हारे साथ चलूंगी या चलूंगा. I am there for you. Even if you don't agree with the doctor, you don't have to take the medication. Let's just go. Let's just give it a try. those kind of, so you need to kind of work your way into it rather than
Right.
come across as a strong dominating person. Because very often when we see somebody in distress, we also get anxious when we try and put pressure on them, which doesn't work.
Right.
And
That's
that
true.
is, yeah. And if there is stuckness beyond this, please, you need to reach out to somebody. Reach out to a counselor, ask them how, because everybody's issue and context is it's very peculiar to them and it's
Very
very
peculiar.
specific. Yeah. So they can figure out how to help,
Okay.
how
Okay.
to
So
facilitate them to reach out.
okay. So even in a situation where the person is not open to suggestion, the person who's helping them can actually reach out to a counselor and ask them how to help the person. Right.
Yes,
That's a very
absolutely.
important point.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a question from one of our viewers, Rekha. Rekha is saying, "Hello, Dr. Vimal. I have a question. How do you differentiate between a very introverted person and a depressed person?"
Okay, so the introverted person, Rekha, will be consistently introverted. Like there will be no change of behavior. It's the change of behavior that is indicative of something is not right. So an introvert will remain an introvert, and you wouldn't notice a change. So that would be the key to figuring out whether it's depression or the person is as it is. And it's a very good question because very often I know people who put labels like ये तो ऐसा ही है, इसको तो गुस्सा ज़्यादा
Right.
आता है, ये तो उदास ही रहता है. Again, dismissing and minimizing what the other person is going through. So that's a very good question because it is hard to figure it out. Speak to somebody specific if the problem persists or if there is something you can't figure out. But I would say that if the person has always been like that, then you need to just accept them for who they are.
So it's the change in behavior that we need to look for. If the
Yeah.
person was otherwise extroverted and then suddenly it has changed, then I guess it's time for you to reach out to the counselor. Um,
Yes.
the other thing is depression genetic, or is it based on environment, or is it a combination of everything together?
Um, Depression is not genetic, it is learnt behavior. So like I said earlier, that if there is anger or if there's depression in the family, it's a family issue. What I really mean to say is that it is learnt behavior. um, when you see somebody who remains melancholic, like a father or a grandfather, and life has worked out for them, they've got a lot of attention in the house, everybody dotes on them, they try and do everything possible to please them, to have them in this happy mood that they wish to see them in. Then the person observing that learns it because that's like the power parent or the power person in the house. That is where the attention lies, that's where the power lies. So very often it becomes a learnt behavior. That is where it gets a little bit um, it gets a little bit hard to kind of intervene because it is so inbuilt into the belief that it's okay to be like this.
Right, right. Oh,
Yeah.
I never knew that it's a learned behavior actually. So what you're saying is that if the person who is the dominant figure within the family has certain traits, then the kids or people around them are more likely to absorb those traits. Is that how? If
Yes.
I understand
Yes.
correctly? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Also,
it's not genetic.
no, it's not genetic. Sorry, have I interrupted you, Sonal? Continue.
No, no, not at all. Not at all.
Alright.
I have
So
another
the
question for the viewer, but I'll ask
Yeah, just
it
let me
once you're
just
done.
finish this. There are two
Yeah.
more points to it. It's also maladaptive coping because, breakups often lead to depression. Boyfriend ne chhod diya. The feeling of rejection. Rejection is one of the hardest things for human beings to handle. So rejection se bhi ho jata hai.
Right.
It could, and it is also possible that it is a problem, like it's a mental illness that is setting in, and depression is one of the first visible symptoms of that. So there are three layers to it. So this is broadly, again, every context is individual and every case is very peculiar in its own way. But speaking of it in an overall terms, this is how it is categorized.
So what are the three things? Can you just repeat them? Like the three
So
layers that you were just.
yeah, one is learned behavior. The other could be maladaptive coping ways, like they don't know how to cope with rejection or a
Oh,
loss,
oh,
or something suddenly that life throws at them and they're not equipped to handle it. And the third
okay.
is that it could actually be a physiological change where the chemicals in your mind are changing and there is a mental illness setting in.
Okay, okay. We have a question from Farooq. Hi, Farooq. Thanks for being here. A question for doctor. Can some people be more predisposed to depression? Like what I was asking, can it be hereditary? Like if one person was more prone. Farooq, I think she's answered the question, but do you want to answer him, uh, Dr. Vimal?
Yeah, I'm maybe Farooq is asking because of maybe relating it to a specific person. Um, it is more, there are people who are more predisposed in a they're disposed to forming it, to adapting a depressive way of handling an issue. So there are two categories in it. One is that there is a predisposition to being depressed, which is again a physiological change, and there is a predisposition to adapting the depression because they don't know how else to handle whatever's going on.
We have another question from Shalini. Hi, Shalini. Thanks for being here. If the change in behavior is gradual, it's difficult to actually recognize the difference in behavior, then what should one do?
Pay attention to the changes that are happening, pay attention to the moods. um, when I say pay attention, don't bring it to the notice of the other person, but just be observant. Because when you say these things out to the other person, they're going to get guarded and they will start pretending around you. So just observe those changes, stay with the changes, watch it for maybe 2 weeks to 3 weeks before you take it up with them.
Um, I hope that answers your question, Shalini. So I guess we have to be observant, we have to be watchful, and we just have to, you know, take a call. It's a very situational thing. Also, I think it depends from situation to situation. Also, now, Dr. Vimal, if there is a person who's suffering from depression, how does it affect the relationships around? Is because I think the whole dynamics must be changing. How does the impact, what is the impact on the relationships around people?
Yeah, because there is irritability within or lack of interest within, it's going to affect the relationship because the person is not in the relationship 100%. Because they are not with themselves 100%, it's going to creep into the relationship because they are not going to be present. So very often, as an example, uh, people say he's not listening to me. मैं जब बात करती हूँ ये सुनते ही नहीं है. कोई भी मैं बात करती हूँ चिड़चिड़ हो जाती है. कोई भी मैं कुछ भी मैं बोलती हूँ तो he feels pressurized into it. Off late, he spends a lot of work. Uh, he spends a lot of time working or watching TV. These are changes to in a relationship which is then going to cause a chain reaction for the relationship to go down further. These need to be addressed, and it's very important to reach out to help if it is filtering into the relationship, because again it's a build up, it's been there and now it is showing up in the relationship. It cannot show up in the relationship before it has built up. So that's something that is again key to keeping a watch, that if it's come into the relationship, please understand it's been in existence for longer than you think.
Okay.
So Yeah, there is some good news around depression that I would like to tell you. Depression is absolutely treatable. Two, beliefs can be changed, and new, healthier, more functional beliefs can be learned. Because very often depression uh, comes in because of some maladaptive beliefs that I don't have the strength to cope with this, I can't handle the loss, oh, my husband's left me, I'm never going to have a normal life. Those kind of beliefs uh, that are they're dysfunctional beliefs basically, or mistaken beliefs. Um, Number three is no one makes it alone. So it's okay to ask for help. Human beings need rootedness, belongingness, and connectedness. And if there is a deprivation of either three of these, if they don't feel they belong, if they don't feel they're connected or they're rooted, it's going to show up as depression. And this is one of the things that have been highlighted in the lockdown, because there is so much of uncertainty around the income, about relationships, about a lot of things. And so the connectedness, belongingness, and rootedness, all three of them have been shaken up. And that is why there is an increase in the number of cases of depression in the 90 days of the lockdown. Um, and the last point I want to make as good news is that therapy really, really helps because it is confidential, it is non-judgmental, and it harnesses into your untapped potential. It also validates and accepts you for who you are. Nobody is going to try and change you into becoming someone you don't want to. But it is your duty to become the best version of yourself.
Now, also, Dr. Vimal, is there a direct correlation between suicide and depression? A lot of times, what happens is whenever we hear about a person committing suicide, there are two things that pop up in a layman's mind. One, we associate that with some life event, saying कि oh, you know what, marks अच्छे नहीं आए थे, और या तो breakup हो गया, or he lost out on some business, something. So either we associate it with a life event, or we say, directly related to mental health. Ki maybe depression raha hoga. Maybe there was some mental illness that didn't get addressed. Is that true? Is suicide correlated to depression and life events, or how does it work, or is it a too simplistic way of looking at it? What's your take? What's the insight into this?
Yeah, it's absolutely linked. I wouldn't say that everybody who commits suicide is depressed and is out of depression, but I would say that a lot of the people who decide to take their lives is out of sheer hopelessness and helplessness and acute sense of worthlessness. Um, it is so the way suicide is correlated to depression is only if there are physiological changes in the chemicals of the mind, um, which is a clinical depression for which medical intervention plus therapy both are required. Um, Also, if there is a maladaptive way of coping, like if a person likes to be in control and something very devastating happens and they're completely out of control and they don't know how to handle being out of control, that may also send an impulse to taking their lives because they suddenly feel um, lost and at a loss of also not knowing what to do with themselves.
So you use the term clinical depression, right? What is clinical depression? How is it different from any other depression then? And you also talked about there are certain chemical imbalances in the mind. So how is that different from? Is there a regular depression and clinical depression? Why? What does that term mean actually?
The clinical depression is the ones that I've been referring to as the chemical changes, is the physiological form of depression where there are changes in the chemicals of the mind. That is termed as clinical depression because clinical in the sense it needs clinical medical intervention. other forms of depression, such as post pregnancy depression,
Postpartum.
seasonal depression. These are situational depressions, and these may not require medical intervention. Therapy is enough to talk and challenge your beliefs and plant seeds of new belief, and one can come out of it by talk therapy. That is largely the difference between the two.
So one is more situational, and one is more physiological.
Yes.
And is physiological, how does that get triggered? Is there a genetic, again, is that genetic, or is it again situational, or like you mentioned, there is that incapacity to handle, can that also bring about that chemical imbalance in the mind?
The decapacitation to deal with the things that life throws at us can be learned through therapy. So that potential can be tapped into if one goes to seek regular therapy. The physiological one certainly requires a medical intervention because it is something that may happen to anybody actually, and it happens without reason. I mean, there are no apparent reasons in the situation or the life around. There's no context to it, but there may be certain changes in the way the person starts to behave, and therefore an intervention is required, which is more medical than therapeutic.
Okay. So we have another question. Farouk is asking, can weather affect the mood of a depressed person? For example, gloomy winter days or snowfall can be a factor, while sunny days can make one feel more positive.
Yes, absolutely. This is not true for everyone, but there is a depression which is called seasonal depression, and it happens to people who are aversive to winter or snowfall, especially who are stuck in cold climates, and it happens. So
Right.
it can affect, but then there is a that happens with a certain category of people. It is not for everyone.
So does it that there has to be some existing symptoms already, and maybe the weather extenuate the symptoms? Is that what it is? It can, or the weather can actually cause the symptoms also.
Yeah, the weather doesn't do anything. It's the way the person so it's not about what's happening to the person. It's about the way the person is interpreting what is happening around, right? So, if supposing, I'd like to give an example here. जैसे एक पंजाबी घर में पंजाबी लेडी को पंजाबी lady has a child. There is only happiness associated to that, like the celebration of having a child, having become a mother, having an ancestor in, I mean, sorry, having a heir to carry on the dynasty of the family in the house and all of that. But if but the same concept doesn't exist in the West. So in the West there is more of the postnatal depression than there is in India, because of the
Yes.
belief which is attached to it, right? um, because this is also a way of proving that the woman is fertile and is absolutely capable of having children. um, we in the city may not relate to it as much, but the larger population of India certainly does relate to this. However, so it's the same with the weather, because there are certain people who feel, oh, कितनी मेरे को बिल्कुल बारिश अच्छी नहीं लगती, गंद मच जाता है, कीचड़ हो जाता है, it just spoils everything and we can't go out. And so it's the interpretation attached to the rain. Somebody else may absolutely be thrilled that it's raining.
Okay, so it's your response to the situation. I think it's the response
It's yeah.
mainly. Um, Also, talking about, so there is, you said there is a direct correlation between depression and suicides. What goes on in a person who actually commits suicide, and is there any way to not to like deter it? Like, is it momentary? Can something be done so that that moment that feeling of hopelessness that the person is going through is diverted, and the the person moves on from the situation. Like, what goes on in a person's mind? I'm sure it's very situational, but from your perspective, uh, you know because suddenly, if you look around, the suicide rates are very high, especially in the young generation, and a lot of it to also do with social media, which is a completely different aspect of conversation. But just to answer this, what can be done to divert that?
Um, it's it's again very specific to every individual, but largely speaking, it's um, it's about how one is interpreting what's going on in one's life. You know, when I did a lot of reading up on Marilyn Monroe, and all she ever wanted was the world to love her.
I'm sorry, but all she wanted was.
The world to love her. She wanted everybody out there to love her. She did everything possible to make that happen, and it did happen. But did she interpret it in that way? No, she didn't, because she missed the point that she will need to love herself before she's able to find it out there. So
Absolutely.
even your car starts with self. Even your
Right.
car starts with self, um, which is a non-living thing. So what I'm trying to say here is that every individual has their own narrative in their mind. It's a story that we feel about ourselves that we should be. It is not about, it's not, we don't accept who we are, but we want to be who we think we should be.
Right.
Okay, largely it is the difference between believing and absolutely uh, making that a reality. Who we should be becomes a bigger reality than accepting who we are. It's okay for us to have limitations. It's okay for us to be helpless. It's okay we don't know everything, but that is something which is so not acceptable. Also, like the social media also plays in the same, it comes into the same forum, because it's a number of likes that are going to define me. If the number of likes are going to define me, then I am going to have to really struggle to find my self worth.
Right.
So largely it is that, but obviously, there is individual context to every story.
Right. So overall, it actually looks like your own handling capacity, how much you're connected to your own self, how much how much centered you are within yourself in your own life. I think broadly, everything is kind of boiling down to one aspect of it, as to accept yourself for who you are and not what you perceive yourself to be, especially in this age of social media, where a lot of people are looking for that validation outside without actually having that validation or that self love or that self confidence within ourselves. So
Yes,
it
absolutely.
was I, I think I it was a very very insightful conversation, Dr. Vimal. I think I we are all taking all we have all absorbed a lot out of this, and hopefully we'll be able to put this in use if need be in our own lives. If there are there any, I don't see any other questions. Is there something that you would like to tell the viewers before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I actually have a small assessment which is very simple, and it's self-assessment, and it works on the word life. It was developed by a psychotherapist by the name of Dr. Julie Ho, and she came up with this, and I find this very useful because I use it a lot. It's called Life, Life. So L stands for the low and shaky self concept. I
Sorry,
stands
say that again. L
L.
stands for.
L stands for low or shaky self-concept.
Okay.
This is what I was saying about our who we should be versus who we are. Okay, the internalized beliefs, I stands for internalized beliefs, which the beliefs that we believe in from childhood. F stands for the fear of the unknown. E stands for the excessive need of control, excessive need for control. Now, these determine an adaptability quotient, an adversity quotient. Um, so, if you have, if you want to kind of understand and develop a better relationship with yourself, very briefly, this is the holistic way to look after your mental and emotional welfare. Um, Question yourself about your self concept, about your beliefs, about the fears that you have, and about the need to control and to be in charge of everything. All right. So this will help you to understand whether are you likely to go ahead with a depressive mood, or can you prevent that by changing this.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Vimal. It was a privilege to have you over, and I'm sure you have created some level of awareness, and I will definitely go ahead and take that self-assessment test for myself. Thank you all for joining in, and thank you all for being so patient in the last 2 days and supporting me. I got so many messages saying that, you know what, it's okay. We are still looking forward to having this show. Till next Thursday, uh, tune in again in Just Sonal with another topic, another journey, and another learning. Thank you, Dr. Vimal. Thank you, audiences. Bye.
Thank
We
you
have
for
one
having
more
me.
question. I'm sorry, I have another question coming up. We'll take this as a
All
last
right.
bit and we'll wrap up. Manish, I'm sorry, I just saw your question. What chemical imbalance in the brain causes depression, and how can we have precautionary controls like yoga or meditation which can avoid to get into that state? It's coming from Manish Rana. Manish, thank you for being here. Swanzil, thank you for being here. One last
Yeah.
question and we'll wrap up.
All right. Hi, Manish. Good question. What causes the chemical imbalance is a very large area to delve into, and because of short of time, we won't be able to do that. How you can prevent it is by keeping a check on your thoughts. What is it that you think the whole day? And broadly speaking, if you are, there are six E's that you want to kind of keep a tap on, which is criticism, control, competition, calculation. Um, I've forgotten the others. If you could keep a tap on what are these categories of thoughts that you have, it's going to help you to keep to make sure that you prevent going into the depressive phase, because your thoughts need to be high energy thoughts.
High vibrational
That is,
energy.
that is the prevention for depression.
So I guess meditation and yoga definitely would help because it actually raises
Yes.
your vibration. You know, raises the frequency. Right. So okay.
Yeah,
I
it
hope.
does, and also because it's integrated into the physical, the balance of having, because yoga is nothing but balance, and it's the balance of the body, mind, and soul.
Right.
Yeah.
So, most of the life's problem actually boils down to, connecting to your own self, being in that high vibration all the time, which actually leads to a very spiritual journey for a lot of us. Thank you again, Dr. Vimal. It was a privilege having you here. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for supporting me, and being so patient with me. Till next Thursday, not same time, next Thursday, 5:30 p.m. with another journey, another learning in Just Sonal in Blue Mug Chat. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Vimal. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.